Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. Back in the studio as always, per usual. It's our weekly session. I am in the studio today with the man himself, the myth, the legend, Mr. Eric Moore.
You know, this is a great day to be here. I'm excited about the podcast. I'm excited about, we've got some great guests coming up. I always love to be here. This is always a good start to the week. And we've got a great conversation today. We'll always have a great conversation, right, Matthew?
Always. We don't, as you guys know, we don't really plan anything. We jump in the studio and I was like, Eric, all right, so what you want to talk about today? He's like, I got something I need to talk about. So we try to keep it light, try to keep it fun for you guys. You know, that's the whole point of why we do this. We want to make sure that we're, not scripted in anything we do. So we want to provide that value for you guys. And I'm excited. I'm always excited. I'm the one that's excited. It's like, okay, so Eric has something today. What are we going to talk about?
Well, this is like a call to action. I think I was talking to two doctors and we were having this conversation yesterday, and it was really going back down to some of the concepts in my new book that's coming out. But it's interesting how much overlap in some ways there is with financial evolution. And we were talking about this concept of professional freedom. And so and what we were talking about was, Dan Sullivan, who's an amazing guy, talks about there's four, freedoms, and one of them being money. And we know money. We think about money, and matter of fact, we think about money a lot. We think about how much we need, how much we're going to need, how long it's going to last, and those types of things. And then we think about time, and we definitely want to have time. I think we don't think as much about purpose. Like, what is the purpose going to be of my life? And then I think it's the relationship, who I want to spend time with. And the reason I'm still called, we've kind of alluded to this a little bit in the last few podcasts, but it's standing strong with me right now, especially what's happening in the industry. And this ghostwriter we were having a conversation with him, and he was asking about young doctors and, what do they do and what do they know? And I was like, when you're young and you're starting a practice, you don't really think about retirement and those types of things. And we were just talking about that professional freedom is the opposite of retirement. And we were talking about the word retirement. The thought of retirement actually came out of Germany, if I'm right. And they were trying to, there was riots, and the riots were about the young people wanting to come into the workforce. So they ultimately had the older people retire so the young people could join the workforce. And this was in the late 1800s. And then over the United States, ultimately speaking, we had Social Security, and then pension funds started pushing 65. And then financial advisors loved it because it made them a definite age that we needed to fund everything by. But we see it's doctors who are selling to DSOs. We see doctors who are walking away, and oftentimes what they think they're going to have their life, like they thought about time, right? They thought about this idea of time and having enough time to do the things they want to. Oftentimes they don't have the money. Now the money happens because of this. Because for every $1 million net that you have in a retirement account, it's like $41.66 a month. That's before taxes, right? So if you think about it, and I talk about this in Financial Evolution, which is the idea of you accumulate into the age of 65, and then we retire, and then ultimately speaking, your goal is to die before your money runs out. Because if someone's making, for instance, $1 million dental practice, you got $300,000 a year in income, and if you were to sell that, even if you netted it, you had no debt, you paid no taxes, you had no brokerage fee, and you just kept the $1 million, even if all that was true, which it's not, then what would happen is that you then go and say, well, yeah, at 5%, $1 million is, $50,000 a year. So that's $41.66 a month. And so for every million, so most doctors don't have 3, 4, 5, 6 million even. And even if they did, it's still a significant pay cut. So, and even the people that are getting some larger checks from DSO still haven't done the math. So then there's retirement pushes you into this idea of trying to die before your money runs out, which I never thought was the purpose of life. And then, not for me. I just thought that it was strange, right? It's like, I always love the financial advisors. Don't worry, you'll be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. It's like, hold on. well, why would I be in a lower tax bracket if I worked so hard for all these years? Oh, because your income's going down. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Excuse me? My income's going down? Oh yeah, don't worry, but your assets are going to go down too. Well, of course, because they literally put you something called the death spiral, which is basically what happens is that $50,000, you were making 300 grand. Okay, let's say on the $1 million dental practice, and now you're making 50 grand a year. Well, you're not gonna be able to live off 50 grand a year. In fact, I mean, that's not much money, right? It's just not. I mean, it's hard to live off 50 grand a year. And so you eat into the principle. Well, now the next year, instead of having, $1 million, now you have less assets. So then you have to eat up some more asset to get you back to your 50 grand. And then you have to eat more asset, until eventually all your money's gone. And it's called the death spiral. And by the way, I've said this in the past. I haven't said this for a while, but don't ever let somebody put you in something called the death spiral. Like that doesn't sound good. But even then, let's move on from that, right? Even if you had the time and the money, say, well, Eric, I'm going to get a big enough check. I'll have the money and time. Even then, I was talking to somebody who ultimately got a big check, and then they spent 6 months creating a treehouse because they didn't know what else to do. And so then what they didn't think about was my purpose. What is your purpose? And let's assume that you had the time and money to do the things that you want to do. Well, then you'd have to move to purpose. Okay, well, if I had the time, money to do things, do I want to just stare at the TV all day? Do I want to travel? Do I want to change someone's life? Do I want to impact people? And a lot of people find that they want to impact people, but usually, oftentimes, impact is put aside because someone doesn't have the time nor the money, or maybe they have the time but not the money to impact people the way they wanted to. And then we have relationship, which is getting to spend time with the people you want to, right? So maybe that's your grandkids, or maybe it's business colleagues, or maybe it's whoever that person is. And so now we get into this idea of when we start looking at entrepreneur freedoms, and the conversation I was having yesterday was this idea of if you plan early and you plan these out, like if I had all the time and money, first of all, I want to know what does that time actually look like? Second of all, how much money would I actually need to be able to do the things I want to? Because you'd have to think about the impact, right? And I talk about the humanitarian and financial evolution. So you would have to talk about the impact. So who would I want to impact? Whose life would I want to change? And then, who would I want to spend time with? And if you actually get ahead of time, which is why someone said to me the other day, they're like, well, then wouldn't it make sense to sell your dental practice? You would just put systems and people in place. I'm like, I know. But assuming that you just still want to sell off your dental practice, even then you have to think about, okay, what am I going to do that actually, and if you reverse engineer your life, so we talk about this idea of wealth, right? This is a dental wealth podcast. So wouldn't wealth be about being able to impact the people you want to be able to impact, spending time with the relationships you want to, having the time and money to do that? Wouldn't that be wealth? Not just money, because you're going to have, how much money do you have? Even if you have money, but you have no one to spend time with and nobody wants to spend time with you, you get tired of being alone all the time.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that people take time to actually think about the long-term trajectory. And I'm going to be talking about this extensively. I'm writing a book with two doctors, and we're talking about, they had friends that ultimately who were tired or sold to DSOs or whatever, and they're really, besides the shame they felt maybe of selling to a DSO, in their lives feeling like that they don't have purpose. And had they have crafted the purpose on the front side, right? They built their garden in the backyard, or train set in their basement or whatever. And now they're like, crap, now what do I do?
I think that's like the vulnerable age we see, banks coming to those practices too. They're all fit into that one category, late 40s, early 50s, and their practice is doing pretty good. And it's a way for someone to get out early. So I think a lot of times, like you were trying to differentiate the young doctors that are coming out, like they don't really think about this stuff. All they're thinking about is, all right, I need to get patients in the door. Okay. Then I need to get team members. Okay. Then I need to make sure I have the financials correct. And then I just have to stay afloat and make payroll. And then that's kind of the steps when it is a new practice. When you have an older practice, you get to a point where, for the past, say 5 years or so, you guys have just been kind of the same. And you're like, okay, I don't feel like I'm getting ahead. It's a lot of work to get ahead. Should I sell this? And then some random person knocks on your door and says, hey, I want to buy your practice. And you're like, oh, well, this is a way out for me. Like, I'm still young. I still can go do stuff. I'm not going to get this valuation in the marketplace if I just keep doing this. This is a great deal. and they sell off, and then they think it's all sunshine and roses, and then boom, they're like, okay, what do we do now? And we see a lot of people go back to work because of that, or just try to figure out and dive into other things or become an associate again. And a lot of times doctors, and it's the hardest thing to overcome with doctors that are in the later stages of their career, I would say, is trying to reinvigorate their purpose. Because when you tell someone that's been doing it the same way for 20 years that they have to start doing it differently, it's hard. It's you're like, it's a lot of pushback. There's a big wall that you come up against. Regards to the young person, they're willing to do it. They're just a little bit scared. The best part about a young person is it's when they start seeing the success, then they'll start doing it. The only negative to that is they will eventually think they've got it all, and then they'll stop doing it and then just bounce around. And we've seen that too. So it's kind of finding the perfect balance. But I think it goes down to the point that you made about the 4 financial freedoms. It's, you got to find the purpose, like all in line with one main purpose to get to where you're going. And when you have that in mind, it becomes an easy strategy at that point. You start plugging things into those to make sure that it happens.
Well, I think, I think people think about, when they think about dental practices, and they think about, yeah, but if I sell off, then I don't have to worry about that phone call, the dreaded phone call, the associate who just left, the hygienist who quit, the patient who's upset, or the case that didn't go right, or that they get to walk away from those things. And I think that's appealing to a lot of people, because they think, if I can just walk away from this case, then, or these headaches, but that void will get filled with another headache. I do tell you that. But the other thing is, like, it probably means you don't have the right people around you. You haven't invested in the systems. We had Frank Lamar on the podcast recently, and he was saying, he'd made a comment. He said, I've never invested into any other company better than myself. Like, investing into my self-education, and my company and my company's growth has always been the greatest bet. And he's like, every time I've bet on other people, it's never turned out as well as when I bet on myself. And so sometimes when you hand all your money to a financial advisor, you're betting on somebody else. It really is. Mm-hmm. When you're betting on yourself, investing in the right talent, investing in the right systems, investing in the right people. But one of the reasons why people have to deal with those phone calls, or the stress of those phone calls, is because they don't have the team around them who can handle those phone calls, because they haven't built the infrastructure inside their organization to have people who can not only handle those things, but to completely deal with it, put the systems in place, deal with the headaches, all those types of things that you didn't even know that stuff happened. And you can have that, but you'd have to be willing to invest in you first, and your practice first. Like, I'm always blown away, even, the work we've done at Tower Leadership, and when we moved people dramatically, and, still you'll have people who are like, they don't even want to invest a few $1,000 into their own self-education. And they're certainly not willing to do the work. And I thought, well, I think, you probably don't have a chance. Like, you probably should have been an associate. If you're not willing to invest in you and your own self-education, I mean, you should be investing, in Financial Evolution. I talk about this. I tell you, you should be investing 10% into you, into your own self-education, your own growth. And you and I were recently in a room full of doctors that were not as educated in business acumen. And it wasn't a stark difference between doctors who are educated. Like, it was like, wow, like, it's a huge difference between the people who know business and know what they're doing and the ones that don't. And it's drastic. And self-education is completely repetition and immersion, doing something over and over again, seeing the ways this works out. And so, people need to define today, not 10 years from now or 20 years from now, or retirement, what if I could design the perfect week? What would that perfect week look like? Irregardless, don't just take all your current circumstances out and say, well, what would be the perfect week? How much money would I need to have that perfect week? And who would I spend time with if I got to spend time with the people I wanted to? And what would I be doing? And, what would be my purpose on earth? And I hope it's more than just playing golf. I mean, there's certainly nothing wrong with playing some golf, but I hope that I hope that there's something bigger. And when we define that purpose now, and we know what that purpose is, we can then build around that. We can build a financial plan around those things. And that takes investment in yourself, and investment in your business, and investment to the future. But it's a much better future. And and I love the dentists that are called to create their own groups, so to speak, their own group practices, because that calling is a strong calling. And I would tell anyone listening to this podcast, if you have the ability to grow a group and you have the entrepreneur spirit, by the way, that was Georgia coming in, spirit, then lean into that entrepreneurial spirit, and make sure you're leaning into your growth and into the future that you can create. Because, I saw a post, by the way, we have social media teams and stuff. And so they grab things that, old stuff. They grab, by the way, they've thrown a few videos lately that I was like, okay. I was a little bit, whatever, heavier, skinnier, whatever, different than, and so kind of some older videos sometimes.
Back in the day.
But sometimes that content is so true. And one of the posts that came out recently was like, you owe it to all the people around you to be successful. Like, you owe it to them. What I mean by that is, like, you have an obligation. If you have the talent and ability to grow an amazing business and you can impact so many lives, like, there's an obligation, because that's my personal paradigm and belief. You might not believe that. Maybe you think it's all about you. My personal belief is that if you have that ability to grow and create, you should lean into that opportunity and maybe that obligation, because, man, the people that you can impact, their lives, man, that's huge. And you don't just have to do it until the age of 65. You can do it at 85, and you can still, continue to impact people for a long time.
I think when it comes to the investment piece too, we get it a lot of times. Well, I invest. Well, when did you invest? I invested that one time 10 years ago and it didn't work out. I think when it comes to the investment, when, for the listeners that heard Eric talk about, the need to do it, investing, it doesn't need to be a crazy investment. It just needs to be little things over time. Like, the consistency is where it's key. Repetition and immersion. You heard Eric say that. I know for listeners that are clients of ours, repetition and immersion, it's consistent investment over a period of time. If you just think that you're going to be able to invest once per quarter into your personal development or once per year, you're not going to get there. You got to think about all the other young, hungry doctors, or the doctors that are growing these group practices. They're growing it for a reason, and they're growing it to go impact, purpose. Some of them, might be just money driven. A lot of them are going to be purpose driven. And what they're going to do is start taking a hold of your market share. And you are going to wake up one day and be like, I don't really know what happened. Well, when's the last time you invested in your business? When's the last time you invested in yourself? And you're going to start looking at all of these things and realizing, oh, I guess I didn't do any of that. I guess I didn't take the steps to do that. I always, like, when somebody calls into Tower Leadership, I'm like, okay, so when's the last time you used a consultant? When's the last time you've, developed or put anything into your personal development? And I can always tell when someone's going to be a great client or not a great client, depending on how they answer that question. They might say yes, and they might say, yeah, none of it worked. Or they might say, yes, I just at the time didn't have the scalability to do it. Right now, I feel like I do, and I'm looking for another avenue. Then I know it's commitment. You have to commit to a process. You have to commit to growing, and you'll see a long-term effect over time when you start doing that.
Repetition, immersion. If we're in a mastermind or something, and I say, guys, how do we learn? And everyone will say repetition and immersion. Like, I coach that into people and say, yeah, you're right, Matthew. It's Rome wasn't built in a day. They didn't fall apart in a day either. Businesses don't fall and go into decline overnight. It happens over an extended period of time. Businesses don't rise overnight either, even though people want them to. They rise over a sustained period of growth and investment inside your own self-education, into your team, into your leadership, into your organizational structure, into marketing, into all the things you do. And it's over a period of time. And the problem is people want results overnight, and that hard work, it takes hard work to build an amazing organization, but damn if it's not worth it. I mean, it's so fulfilling to see an amazing organization that you build, and go back to purpose again, like maybe that is your purpose. Maybe it's to build an amazing organization. And by the way, you don't even have to worry about the finances. You build an amazing organization, the money will be there, and you'll make a lot more money just because you're focusing on the things you should be focusing on, which is purpose of your organization. And growing purpose inside your organization is key, not just for you, but it's a paradigm that you walk in the door with. And when you talk to anybody and you're building your systems. And so I would tell you that when we're looking at organizations of, that are, those are my favorite organizations. They're like, we're building this thing to last. We're building something amazing. So I'm just encouraging you on this podcast to really think about your own wealth. What is wealth, and what is the cash flow that's needed, and what would you do with your time? And I don't think I'll ever stop, Matthew. So I'll tell everybody. So last week I worked. It was a few weeks ago, whatever it was. This was my kids' spring break. And my son with some friends for a week, they were going to the beach. And so, that's what happens to dad. They get ditched at a certain age, right? I got ditched. and
believe me, he was sour about it, guys. He comes like, yeah, I'm just spring break, no big deal. I guess I'm just going to hang up by myself.
I took the week off so that I could spend with my kids, and I got ditched. But, that's okay. So what I did was I worked from home. And after a week of working from home, I literally couldn't get back to the office fast enough. I was like, I don't know how people work from home. I just can't understand it. It's not for me. I mean, maybe it's for somebody else. But the idea of working from home forever, like I just, you can have it. Like that doesn't even, walking around the house in a daze trying to find something to do, like, my gosh, I mean, you can have it.
Look how productive you were, though, Mr. Social Butterfly.
I was very productive, wasn't I?
Sometimes I try to convince Eric to work from home, guys, just so you know.
I was very productive. That is true. I was very productive. But if you're not even willing to invest in a book, if I tell you to go read Financial Evolution and you haven't read it yet and you haven't taken the time to read it, then I think you're making a mistake. Like I'm telling you, that was done over thousands of meetings with doctors. Like the book is not even like, I think they put it in like it's a big font too. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I put a lot of work into it, but it's not that hard to read. But if you're not willing to take a little bit of time to go on Amazon, click a button and get a book to read, you're making a big mistake because it really will help you make decisions. I just got someone recently that was like, yeah, I read the book and then I gave it to my son. It's not just even, by the way, even if you're not a dentist, it applies to you. It wasn't written just with dentists in mind. It was written with people in mind, especially business owners. And so if you haven't, like I said, I'm certainly not trying to solicit the book. I'm just trying to help you out and tell you, go, I had a guy yesterday who was like, I was going to go to Amazon and buy it. I said, I'll just send you a copy. It's not that big a deal. So I was like, that's not where I'm making my money. So my whole point is like,
in yourself,
invest in yourself. Like, it's like freaking, someone told me one time, I think I charged like $25 or something on Amazon. So I was like, I don't think you should lower it to $19.97. I was like, I don't really care. Like, if you're not want to spend $25,
that was the publishers. That wasn't even our call. The publishers like, we're going to put it here. We're like,
yeah. Okay. I was like, if you're not going to spend $25 on yourself, I'm like, you're going to buy a financial book, but then you're like trying to get it for like, I'm just trying to make sure it's under $20. I mean, but the whole point is
eventually you have to get to a point where you invest some of because when you have skin in the game, that's when it becomes real. I think I make that point because I don't remember. It was like 2 years ago. We had someone that made a comment online that was like, yeah, I listened to the podcast. I got the free books and yeah, that's all I need. I just have to listen to that and I'll be fine. And remember that doctor that was like, I'm just getting all the free content. And that's all I need from Tower Leadership. And we were like, well, I mean, eventually you're going to need to put a little skin in the game to get more results. Cause I guarantee you that same practice is still doing the exact same thing. And I just pulled it up. I came across a quote when we talk about investments and, it takes time. It popped up on my feed the other day and it was from Usain Bolt. And I don't know if you've heard this or not, but he made a quote that said, I trained 4 years to run only 9 seconds. There are people who do not see results in 2 months, give up and quit. And when I saw that, it was like, this is the perfect statement. It really is the perfect statement. And I try to, when people call in, I say, it's going to be hard work. Like nothing in life is easy. If you put the time, you put the effort, and you have a purpose, you have the financial freedoms, like you know exactly what you're doing. In those 4 years, it will pay off. But a lot of times people won't even wait 6 months. They won't wait 2 years to see the results. But you got to think there's a lot of things that are happening. There's momentum that's being grown over time. You know, Amazon, Tesla, all of these major companies didn't just become a $1 trillion company overnight. There was probably points in time when they first started, for the first probably 6 years, they were like, I don't know, how are we going to make payroll? Like, our expenses keep going up. Yeah, we keep getting investments in, but with every investment becomes more expenses and we're flatlining. What do we do? And Elon and Bezos and Jobs could have given up, but they did it.
Well, I saw a thing recently was the FedEx, a guy who started FedEx basically. He had a bill, I think it was like $5,000 or $20,000 or whatever it was, and he ended up going to Vegas. I think if I remember the story right, he owed 20 grand. He only had $5,000 in his checking account, so he went to Vegas with his $5,000. Ended up making $25,000. Took it so he could pay his bill to keep the company afloat, and so he, you know, FedEx wouldn't be here had he have maybe the dice rolled a different way, and so I love that because it's like
meant to be.
It was meant to be. I think that when you fight for something, you know, if we truly fight for something, we believe in something. And no, you're right. I saw that quote too, and I thought, isn't that interesting? You know, 4 years for 9 seconds. You know, most people, you know, if they don't get results in 30 days, I mean, you know, it's so funny. My trainer was saying, he was at the gym and they said to him, you know, what are you training for? And he was like, life. Like, trying to stay healthy forever. I'm not on the cabbage diet or whatever. You know, don't even get me started on this stupid carnivore diet thing. But you know, it's like I know there's like 12 people listening to the podcast right now who just got offended. I love the carnivore diet. The whole point, as I'm trying to make, is that, you know, it's a sustained effort over a period of time. That's what gets results. It's investing in yourself over a period of time. The diet that you did that worked for 6 months, can you eat like that forever? Well, I don't know what your heart disease is going to be like if you only eat meat, but, you know, and your skin and everything else. I mean, the truth is that we need living enzymes. We need to put nutrients in our brain. We need to think. We need to be able to invest in ourselves. We need self-education. And I will tell you, and I can't get this, the more you self-educate, the more advanced rooms you're in, the better the mastermind, the better the conversation. Like, we see it where like, we won't put certain people in rooms with other people because ultimately speaking, you have to level up, and there are levels in your growth in education. And most people listening to this podcast, no matter where you are, there's another level and another level and another level. And what's the next level? And if you don't invest in yourself and you don't know your purpose and your passion and what do you want to do with your time and money and energy, you're just reactive in life, and you're reacting to the economy, and you're upset because Tucker Carlson got fired, and you're upset because of, or maybe Don Lemon or whoever you're upset about, and you're upset about Biden, and you're upset about the economy, and you're upset about inflation, you're upset about the interest rates, and you're upset about. But, you know, the great Jim Rohn once said, but that's all you got. That's all you got. All you got is this economy. All you got is these interest rates. All you have is this president. That's all you got to work with. You can complain about it, but you don't have anything else. That's all you get. You don't get anything else. So if you complain about everything you got, he would say, everything you got is what he would say. And as he said, by the time people get done with their blame list, there's nothing left to blame. Now, I had that same blame list years ago, but I got rid of it. Looks like some people found it. And so, you know, I go back to that quote, and I think it's so hilarious, which is, you know, so I would, in this podcast, you know, as we come up on about 30 minutes, here's what I would tell you to do. Lean into those entrepreneurial freedoms. Think about it. It's why you started a business. Think about your purpose in life, not just in your practice, but in your life. Dental practice is nothing more than an asset. What do you want to do with this life, right? Who would you want to impact? And how much time do you need to do the things you want to do? And how much money do you need? And build a program around that. By the way, hint, spoiler alert, your financial advisor can't get you there. You have to do it through building a business. Your business, you can grow another $1 million in valuation in your business in no time. Literally 6 to 12 months, you can make another $1 million in revenue. It would take 20 years to do the same thing in an investment account. You'd have to give somebody literally another 83,333 a month after taxes, which is basically another 10 grand a month, just to add another $1 million to your portfolio. Your business is a much better investment with that same money. With that same 83,333, your business can grow millions. And so in 1 year, by the way, not a decade either. And so I just want you to think about that as you lean into your purpose and your passion and your wealth. And wealth means a lot of things. And you got to invest in yourself. You got to invest in this business, invest in your asset. Go into this life, and maybe even this week, with intentionality around those core principles. Take some time to journal. Grab a journal and maybe journal this out and create a game plan. If you need help with the game plan, reach out, and don't be scared. We're not that scary people. Not all the time. No, I'm just kidding.
Not all the time, man.
But lean in. Find someone who can coach you. And if it's not us, then fine. Find somebody else. This podcast is a purpose-driven podcast. We're just here to serve and help. So, find some people who can build systems around you to help you have the life that you deserve. And you'll impact a whole lot of people on the way, and it'll be kind of cool. So that's a message for
if you have those people. I think if you have those people, this is a great opportunity for you to share this to someone too. We always say this, and I'll keep saying it at the end of every podcast is, if you know someone that needs to hear this message, share it. Even if they're not in dental, like if they're in some other business entity, send it to them. Make sure they know. I mean, we try to keep it to where, anyone in any phase in life, regardless of the business they're in, can listen to this podcast. I know it's called the Dental Wealth Podcast, but we want to make sure that it's accessible to the masses. So make sure you always, like, subscribe, share with others. We're on Spotify now. So go on Spotify. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of those. If you listen, I would encourage you to watch on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. You get to see Mr. Morin and myself in the studio. And then we'll see you next time. So thank you so much, Mr. Morin, for joining us. Stay tuned. We're going to have some speakers coming up in the next few weeks. We're going to try to get some speakers on the book. So be on the lookout for that. So be sure to tune in the next couple of weeks and we'll get those out. So we'll see you next time. Thank you.
See you soon.